yeah, everything is great. Like 99.9% of things are amazing. And this little area is not. There is nothing wrong with people wondering, like, well, what does this mean for you in your relationship? Or even people feeling like this is an example of why polyamory doesn't work. There's so many things to say, I think, and I'm sure that we won't be able to say them all, and I don't really want to say them all. It's hot.
It's really hot in this car.
Just want to, like, I think, share throughout our process, because this is something that so many people go through in one way or another, and we really never get to see that process. And although it is like the most vulnerable thing I could imagine sharing,
I don't know what to call this because we're not breaking up. There's nothing to break. And we're also just doing the same thing we've always done, which is connecting with each other.
loving down of each other.
More than ever.
Yeah.
Loving each other more than ever, and really loving and supporting each other unconditionally to the best of our abilities, and doing the same for ourselves. And we've been doing so much this last 6 years together, and continually stepping into the unknown in one way or another, and this is another manifestation of that, and it feels really big right now. And I think that for me it feels like there's a lot of lingering attachment to let go of, how I attach to you, and fear about stepping into this unknown place and like what our relationship will look like.
This is something that neither of us knew exactly, without really unearthing all of these different things like attachment and finding more of ourselves, and finding more of our deepest needs and wants and desires, without trying to be something for the other person. And yeah, I think you and I are so good together.
I fucking love our relationship.
And I think, you know, we also want slightly different things right now. And even though it's slightly different things, it's affecting the entirety of our lives. I don't know, we need to do something different.
Yeah.
And I do want to be specific, and also, like, this is...
It's kind of the point.
Yeah, this is kind of where we're at. Yeah.
Man, I feel like we have the healthiest relationship of anyone I know, and also for me, I still put, like, these desires of what I wanted, and like put you in my fantasies, and like wanted you to be something, or wanted to carry out this dream life with you, and we align on so much of that dream life, and one specific thing that we don't align on right this second is where we're living, and specifically that we've spent a year living all together with Bridget, and that's not something you want to do right now.
Yeah. There is nothing wrong with people wondering, like, well, what does this mean for you in your relationship? Or even people feeling like this is an example of why polyamory doesn't work. This is the best way for me to personally navigate relationships, which is to allow it to change and be really open to change. And that is what you are watching. That is what is unfolding, is something being allowed to change, and change is happening. But the last year, and the last 2 years really, but the last year in particular, I've already been mourning the change in our relationship and the things that I expected and wanted, and I think it's perfect. It's perfect for me in this moment. And the benefits, you know, we have spoken about in other videos, but I'll just say again that I've never been able to be closer with you than I am now.
And yeah, like me not wanting to live with your partner right now doesn't mean I don't want you to have another partner or that I don't want you to live with another partner. It just means that like I don't want to do that thing right now. And that's really okay for me to be honest with myself about. And it's really okay for you to do what's best for you. And it's really okay for us to support each other in our differences.
Unless you add a whole bunch of adjectives to clarify the type of relationship you're describing. When people say relationship, we think of one person relating to another. And naturally, we then think of open relationships and polyamory in terms of just having more stars in the constellation. Problem is, in practice, that's not the case at all. If you think about a workplace, you do have relationships within your workplace that consist of one person relating to another. But sometimes you have relationships to a room, a department, a table, an abstract idea of a decision-making authority that may involve 5 or 6 people or may involve 50 or 60, right? Your relationship with the board of directors is not the same as your relationship with any particular person on the board of directors who may have lunch with you, right? In this strange way, we relate both to people and abstractions. And with time, our relationships with people become poisoned by our preconceptions about them created by those abstractions. What I see as the primary problem that Brittany and Conor have been dealing with these many years is that they don't relate to each other. They relate to an abstract idea of what their relationship ought to be. For them, this is very much an ideology. It's an ideology they preach and present on YouTube, and I have no problem with that. Anyone can come out and put out their shingle and start charging money for relationship advice on YouTube. I don't begrudge them, their business model, right? But they come to believe in that ideal of what their relationship ought to be. And then with time, instead of just relating to the other person, or instead of relating to the other people, because they have other lovers at any given time on a one-on-one basis, they're always relating to this abstraction, which is much more present in the room than the average religion, right? We all know some pious sinners who, condemn themselves to hell every Friday and Saturday and go and get saved and purified on Sunday. It might be just one day of the week, or it might just be a few hours out of the week that are set aside for religion for even the most pious among us, right? But this couple, they are beholden to the ideal of their own love and what it ought to be at all times, and they measure themselves against that ideal in the same way that the pious Christian or pious Jew can never be pious enough to live up to the ideals set down in the Bible or set down for them by their own grandparents or what have you. They're beholden to and always reaching for this perfect sense of what their relationship ought to be. And, they also relate to this ideal as a money-making venture. You could imagine a couple who just open a corner store, a little shop that sells chocolate bars and bags of potato chips. To some extent, they relate to each other as individuals, as lovers, as two people who've fallen in love. And to some extent, they relate to each other through this ideal of what the business venture is supposed to be and what part in it each of them desires or assumes the other is going to play. If the other person ever lets you down, hey, when we opened this shop, this is how I imagined you'd be I imagined you'd be waking up before me and mopping the floor because I'm the one who does the accounting. I felt that because I do the numbers and the books that you would spend more time mopping the floor, and now you're letting me down, or you're hiring another person to mop the floor instead of you, and I felt that was your... Life is full of those kinds of minor conflicts and scraped knees, especially when you have a business venture. But for Conor and Brittany, right, their ideology is their money-making venture, right? And their ideology is this fetishized notion of what their relationship is supposed to be. So to what extent do I relate to you just as you, just man to man, person to person, however you want to say it? And to what extent do I relate to you because you're the head of the sales department, right? Because of your role assigned in that abstraction. To what extent? I mean, I used to go for lunch with my professors, and you could almost kind of feel the dial click, when they stopped being my teacher and just started being my friend. Or, again, sometimes I was only 10 years younger than these people or something. They weren't so much older than me. They had similar interests and similar frustrations. You can even feel that when they switched from, pretending to kind of be aloof from the problems of the university to complaining the exact same way students do about everything that's wrong with the university. You could almost feel, one mask come off and perhaps another mask goes on, at the same time. Abstract notions about your relationship can become an obstacle to just relating person to person. And the problem with polyamory, the problem with open relationships, is that the more people you bring in, the greater and greater is this hazard that you're no longer relating to people on that one-to-one basis, but you're relating, frankly, to the board of directors. You're relating to people in terms of the role they play in one venture or another, even if that venture just is this abstract, ossified notion you've got about what your polyamorous relationship is supposed to be.
My slang is editorial, explicit material, briefcase show, live and stereo flow, feel me.